Alright, what's going on everyone, and welcome to the series in which I introduce you to all of the most powerful competitive decks in the modern format. The goal here isn't to give an exact deck list, as those change constantly, but rather to give a brief overview of how the deck works so you can be prepared if you're new to the format. So today we're talking about Amulet Titan, a deck so complicated that I'm actually going to have to spend some time just explaining the mana base, so let's not waste time. Let's just get right into it. So the deck gets its name from Amulet of Vigor and Primeval Titan. We'll get to the giant later. First, let's talk about the Amulet. It's a 1 mana artifact that says when a permanent you control enters the battlefield tapped, you can untap it. Now there are tons of powerful permanents in Magic that enter tapped, not to mention some very strong lands that are usually too weak because lands entering tapped in Modern is a bit too slow, but this deck is looking to play bounce lands. Let's be clear about this. These are not modern playable lands. These are not good. In fact, I would go so far as to say that they're actually quite terrible. But with Amulet of Vigor, they're kind of crazy. So they tap for 2, but they enter tapped and you have to bounce another land to your hand. So like in a normal deck, right? In a normal deck, you play a normal land on turn 1. So you have 1 mana on turn 1, naturally. On turn 2, you can tap that land, then play the bounce land, but it comes into play tapped, so it's still, you get 1 mana on turn 2, which isn't good. You're behind on mana there. And then on turn 3, you can play your land again, and now you have 3 lands, 3 mana, and a dual land. Instead of having 1 mana, then 2 mana, then 3 mana, you have 1, 1, and then 3, but on the 3rd turn you have a dual land, I guess. So it's really bad. Unless you have lands with enter the battlefield effects, it's just terrible. Not really what you want. But with Amulet of Vigor, that changes, because Amulet of Vigor is going to untap it. So you have 1 mana on turn 1, on turn 2, you tap your basic, you play your bounce land and bounce it, but it untaps, so now you have 3 mana on turn 2, right? So you're going up in mana. It's actually mana ramp when you have Amulet of Vigor. You turn a terrible land into a better than average land. Now this ramp gets even more powerful with Azusa and Dryad of Elysian Grove. Both of these allow us to play an additional land each turn, and Azusa actually lets us play 2 additional lands. This not only negates the drawback of having to bounce a land, but also lets you bounce lands with bounce lands. That is to say, you can tap a bounce land for 2, play another bounce land, which enters untapped for 4 mana, then play your first bounce land, bouncing the second one, and now you have 6 mana with 3 lands, right? So the combination of being able to play multiple bounce lands per turn, plus having them enter the battlefield untapped with the amulet, means bounce lands become like super mana accelerant. So what are we looking to do with all this mana? Well, that's where Primeval Titan comes in. It's a 6 mana 6/6 with trample, and when it enters the battlefield or attacks, you get to search your library for 2 lands and put them onto the battlefield. Now, bear in mind, that is onto the battlefield, not into your hand, so that's more ramp. And note that it says 2 lands, not 2 basic lands, so you can find anything with Primeval Titan, including more bounce lands to bounce your bounce lands, right? So this is just more mana. You can get a turn 4 Primeval Titan and get 2 more lands, and it's going to trigger every time it attacks. Now, don't get me wrong, Primeval Titan is insane. A turn 4 6/6 trample that gets 2 lands, it's very powerful. But what's even crazier is this deck plays Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle, which is a land that says if you play a mountain and have 5 other mountains in play, it deals 3 damage to any target. Now, bear in mind, Primeval Titan fetches 2 lands, so you can get 2 Valakuts with the enter the battlefield trigger, or it can find 2 other lands to trigger Valakuts that you might already have in play, and that's going to trigger every turn. So if you have 2 Valakuts in play, a Primeval Titan attack, not only is that 6 trample damage, but if you get 2 mountains, that's 6 damage per mountain, right? Because each mountain is going to trigger each Valakut. So you're looking at like 12 plus damage with just a Primeval Titan and a couple of Valakuts, which the Primeval Titan gets. The Primeval Titan fetches the Valakuts. So this combo of Primeval Titan and Valakut results in a ton of damage. And it gets even more powerful when you consider the fact that your bounce lands can return lands to your hand, and things like Azusa allow you to play multiple lands per turn. So now you can see, right? You have Primeval Titan finding lands, you have Azusa playing multiple lands per turn, and then you have bounce lands bouncing lands to your hand. so you can replay them and retrigger the Valakuts. Now, if you're observant, you might point out that, wait a second, these lands are mountains. Valakut specifies that you need to have mountains in play, and you're right, in fact, not a single land in this deck is a mountain. That's because we skipped over an important piece of text on Dryad of Elysian Grove. It says all your lands are all land types, including mountains. So this basically allows the deck to combo with Primeval Titan and Valakut, because with Dryad in play, all your lands are mountains. So that's all pretty powerful, but what if you don't have the Dryad? Because that's getting into jank territory, right? That's a lot going on, and that's okay, because Primeval Titan can also fetch Slayer's Stronghold and Sunhome, Fortress of the Legion. Slayer's Stronghold can give a creature +2/+0, Vigilance, and Haste, and the Fortress can give a creature double strike, resulting in a 16 power trampling attack when the opponent isn't expecting it, because it happens, with haste. It does require a lot of mana, though, as we've demonstrated, this deck can produce tons of mana, but remember that you can do this in 2 stages. Okay, so you play the Titan, right? And you fetch the Stronghold and any other land, preferably a bounce land with an amulet in play for more mana. Now, you can use the Stronghold to give the Titan haste, and then you can attack and get 2 more lands. So you resolve the attack trigger, you get the Fortress and another land, and then you can activate that for double strike when blockers are being declared. In fact, if you have enough land drops available and enough mana, you could play Titan, get the Stronghold first main phase, activate it, then play a bounce land to bounce it to your hand, replay it, activate it again for 10 power total, then attack, get the Fortress, get double strike for 20 trample damage. Or alternatively, if you already have one of these in play, let's say you already have like the Stronghold and you only need the Fortress, and you do have a Dryad, you could, get Valakuts to get extra damage, or maybe blow up blockers too. That's another thing that Valakut can do. And this deck's just complicated. Did I mention that? Did I mention this deck is complicated? It's pretty complicated. But basically, Amulet of Vigor, untapping bounce lands, Primeval Titan getting lands, Azusa Dryad, multiple lands per turn, lands that do stuff, lands. Now this all seems like a janky, complicated mess, but it's actually very consistent because it has many ways to find its combo pieces. Primeval Titan can be tutored up with Summoner's Pact, and Amulet of Vigor can be found with Urza's Saga. The pact costs 0, but you have to pay mana for it the following turn. Conveniently, the Titan tutors for lands to pay for the Summoner's Pact, right? Use Summoner's Pact, it's free. You get a Primeval Titan, you play it, you get 2 lands. You're going to be able to pay that next turn no matter what. Urza's Saga, once it dies, it has multiple phases. It can make construct tokens. Eventually it dies. It finds an artifact that costs 0 or less. That would be your amulet. So you have 2 ways to get your key pieces here. It also plays Teleria West. It's a land with transmute, which means it can be discarded to find a card that costs 0 or less. And this can find any land you need. If you need Valakut, if you need one of the strongholds, whatever, anything, any land you might need, just more bounce lands, whatever, go find any land you want. But it can also find Summoner's Pact or Urza Saga, since the pact does technically have a mana cost of 0. So Teleria West can effectively find both of your key pieces. Teleria West costs 3, Summoner's Pact costs 0, and there's your Primeval Titan, right? So getting your amulets and your Primeval Titans, not that big of a deal. It's also common to see like Expedition Map, Explore, Arboreal Grazers. These are just like mana smoothing, acceleration, some card draw, just some general good stuff. Perfectly fine. And then there's Cultivator Colossus. This has become incredibly popular recently. Most decks are playing a couple copies, so it has power and toughness equal to your land count, and then when you play it, you can put a land from your hand into play, and if you can do that, you get to draw another card and repeat the process. So like if you have 3 lands in your hand, you can play a land, draw, play a land, draw, play a land, draw. And if you find any more lands, and you can just keep going until you run out of lands. So you just dump your lands and draw through your deck. And remember, bounce lands? We have bounce lands, so we could draw a lot of cards. They return more lands to our hands, and it's really good. You can also tap your lands, right? You can play your you can play your bounce land. You can tap it, you can bounce it, you can play it, draw, tap, draw. Look, the deck, it likes lands. It's lands and it's big stuff. Did I mention Radiant Fountain? Oh, Radiant Fountain. it gains 2 life and it can be bounced repeatedly. I mean, Dryad of Elysian Grove, it kind of makes Radiant Fountain into like a sort of lightning helix every time you can bounce it. And you get more bounce lands. With the Primeval Titan, it's... okay. So that's the Amulet Titan. It's complicated. It's a deck with a bunch of different lines of play. If you're new to Modern, let me say this, guys. If you're new to Modern, you're going to lose to this deck, and it's going to be very confusing. It is a very confusing, hard deck to play against, and it's going to kill you out of nowhere. Don't feel bad. You're not stupid. It happens to the best of us. It'll be okay. You're gonna lose to this deck because it's just so difficult to play against. And if you're thinking about playing this deck, you will absolutely play it suboptimally. You're gonna miss lethal regularly, and you're absolutely gonna punt games into oblivion. Don't feel bad. You're not stupid. Happens to the best of us. It's okay. The deck's complicated. It's hard to play. It's a little bit baffling. There's just so many things it can do, and there's so many overlapping synergies and lines of play. Deck's just complicated. It's very difficult to play against. It's very difficult to play. It's one of those decks that I bet people look at the deck list and they don't understand how powerful it is. And it's the type of deck that you feel like it's not doing anything, and then it just blows up in your face and you just feel kind of stupid, but it's not. It's not your fault. It's a complicated deck. It's fine. I'm gonna go now. You can find links in the description to the most up-to-date deck list if you're interested, as there are always multiple builds of the same deck in the meta, and decks change over time and all that, like the recent edition of Cultivator Colossus, for example. So yeah, many people say that Modern is a scary, intimidating format because, it's very complicated, complex, lots of complex, intricate decks, and for the most part, it's like, nah, it's okay. You can do it. You can do it. You'll be fine. There are plenty of linear, straightforward decks. You can figure it out. I promise. It's not as complicated as it seems. But this deck, it's the stereotype. This is the one that will make you feel stupid if you're new, one way or the other. Whether you're playing it or playing against it, you're gonna feel like an idiot. It's okay though. So yeah, there you go. Amulet Titan. That's the video. See you on the next one.